Ever feel like, the world's just too much?
Oh, yeah.
Like, wouldn't it be amazing to just kind of like start over,
Mm-hmm.
build a society, from scratch, where everybody's equal and we all work together for the common good?
Yeah, I get that.
Well, get this. Back in the 19th century, a French guy named Etienne Cabet actually tried to do just that.
Wow.
Talk about a deep dive. We're going all the way back to explore this fascinating story.
Really?
We've got excerpts from a podcast about Cabet, a book published way back in 1884 about his life. And get this, a firsthand account from someone who actually lived in one of his communities.
That's amazing. It's incredible to think about. And you know what's so interesting?
What's that?
Cabet's story, it isn't just some dusty history lesson.
Right.
He was grappling with issues that feel so relevant today, like economic inequality, social injustice, that feeling that the system's just not working for everyone.
So he wasn't just some idealistic dreamer. He was really trying to address real-world problems. But how did he even get started with this whole Utopia project?
Well, you have to remember the context. Cabet was living in 19th century France, a time of major upheaval.
Yeah.
Industrialization was changing everything, creating vast wealth for some, but leaving many others struggling in poverty. Cabet himself was a lawyer and an activist, deeply involved in the revolutionary movements of his day.
Wow.
He was even exiled and imprisoned for his beliefs.
Really?
Yeah. These experiences, they really shaped his worldview and fueled his desire for radical change.
Wow, talk about commitment. So it sounds like his personal struggles really pushed him towards this idea of building a better world.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is that his solution wasn't about, just tweaking the existing system. It was about creating an entirely new one. He called it Icarian.
Icarian.
A utopian society based on the principles of communal living, shared resources, and complete equality.
Okay, so how did he get from this big idea to actually trying to make it happen?
He laid it all out in his book, Voyage to Icarian. He describes this fictional society in such detail, it's like a blueprint for his utopia. No money, no private property, everyone working together for the common good.
It's amazing that he thought he could actually create this perfect world.
Yeah.
Did people buy into it?
You wouldn't believe the response. The book was a smash hit, especially among working class folks who were, feeling the squeeze of industrialization.
Right.
They saw Icarian as a way out, a chance for a fairer, more just way of life.
So people were actually ready to pack their bags and go build this utopia.
That's right. Groups of Icarians started forming all over France. They held meetings, pooled their resources, and planned for their great adventure, their first stop, Texas.
Texas. Seems like a long way to go to build a utopia.
It was. And you know what? Things didn't exactly go as planned.
I can imagine. What happened?
Well, you have to remember these were mostly city folks, artisans, intellectuals, not exactly, rugged pioneers.
Yeah.
The Texas terrain was harsh, the climate unforgiving, and they really weren't prepared for the challenges of frontier life.
So their utopian dream kind of crashed into the reality of Texas.
Pretty much. Their first attempt was a major setback. Many returned to France disillusioned, and Cabet himself faced criticism for his leadership.
So was that the end of Icarian?
Not quite. The Icarians were resilient. They regrouped and found a new opportunity in a rather unexpected place.
Where?
The abandoned town of Nauvoo, Illinois.
Nauvoo? What was so special about Nauvoo?
Well, the Mormons had recently left Nauvoo, leaving behind a town with existing infrastructure, houses, farms, workshops. It was almost like a ready-made community just waiting for them.
Wow, that's a lucky break. So did they finally find their utopia in Nauvoo?
Well, they were certainly optimistic. They established a thriving community there, put Cabet's ideas into practice, communal living, shared resources, democratic decision-making. But, even in utopia, things aren't always smooth sailing.
Uh-oh. What happened? Did they run into more trouble?
Let's just say that building a perfect society turned out to be a lot more complicated than they anticipated. Building a utopia from scratch, it's a bit like baking a cake.
Okay.
You can have the best recipe, the finest ingredients, but if you don't mix them properly, if you don't bake it at the right temperature for the right amount of time,
right,
it's going to be a flop.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened to the Icarians in Nauvoo.
So their utopian cake didn't quite rise. What went wrong?
Well, they had the recipe, right? Cabet's vision of communal living, shared resources, democratic decision-making. And they had the ingredients, a dedicated group of followers, a town with existing infrastructure. But the mixing and baking process, that's where things got tricky.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about these baking mishaps. What were the specific challenges they faced?
Well, one issue was leadership. Cabet, despite advocating for equality, could be quite controlling. This created tension within the community, especially as some Icarians, began to question his authority and propose alternative ways of doing things.
Oh, so even in a utopia, you can't escape the complexities of human dynamics, power struggles, disagreements, different personalities. It's bound to happen.
Exactly. And then there was the issue of women's roles. The Icarians, for all their progressive ideals, were still products of their time.
Right.
Traditional gender roles persisted, and women often found themselves, relegated to domestic duties rather than having an equal say in community affairs.
That's disappointing. But
Ugh.
but not entirely surprising. It seems like even when you're trying to build a new society, it's hard to completely break free from the old ways of thinking.
Absolutely. And these simmering tensions, eventually they reached a boiling point. Cabet's increasingly authoritarian style alienated many Icarians, and the debate over women's rights further divided the community.
So did these conflicts tear the community apart?
You could say that. Things came to a head when Cabet was actually expelled from the very community he had founded.
Wow.
He left Nauvoo with a small group of loyal followers and attempted to establish yet another Icarian community in St. Louis.
Wow. Talk about a plot twist.
Yeah.
So what happened to the Icarians who stayed behind in Nauvoo? Did they give up on the whole Utopia project?
Not at all. In fact, they regrouped, reorganized, and continued their experiment in communal living. Even without Cabet at the helm, remember that land they had purchased in Iowa? Well, that became their new frontier.
So they packed up and headed west. Was this like a mass exodus, or did they trickle in over time?
It was a gradual migration. Some Icarians, disillusioned by the infighting and Cabet's departure, they chose to return to France. But the majority, determined to keep the Icarian dream alive, they saw Iowa as a chance for a fresh start, an opportunity to build their community anew.
It's remarkable how resilient they were, how committed to this vision of a better world. But I'm curious, without Cabet's leadership, did they manage to create a more truly egalitarian society? Did they learn from the mistakes made in Nauvoo?
That's where things get really interesting. The Icarians in Iowa, they faced their own unique set of challenges and opportunities. They were now a smaller, more tightly knit group.
Right.
And they had the benefit of hindsight. They still adhered to the core principles of communal living, shared resources, and democratic decision-making. But they also had to contend with the practicalities of survival on the frontier.
Right.
Farming the land, building homes, generating income.
It sounds like they were trying to balance their idealistic vision with the realities of frontier life. Did they manage to find that balance?
Well, accounts from journalists who visited the Icarian community in Iowa paint a fascinating picture. They describe a community that was both idealistic and incredibly hardworking. The Icarians were committed to their principles, but also pragmatic in their approach. They had to overcome, significant obstacles, debt, internal divisions, the ever-present threat of failure.
It's a far cry from Cabet's romanticized vision of Icaria, isn't it? More calloused hands than leisurely strolls in the garden.
Indeed. But even in their struggles, there's a sense of nobility, a commitment to their ideals that shines through. They were willing to sacrifice comfort and personal gain for the sake of their collective vision. And their story becomes even more compelling because of their imperfections, because of the real-world challenges they faced.
It makes me think about those early American settlers who braved the wilderness to create a new life for themselves.
Yeah.
There's a similar spirit of adventure, of resilience, of a belief in a better future, even if it's hard-won.
That's a great comparison. And just like those early settlers, the Icarians faced setbacks and disappointments. But they also experienced moments of triumph, of community, of genuine progress towards their goals. And those moments, I think, are what kept them going, even when the going got tough.
Okay. So we've got the Icarians in Iowa. They're building their community. They're facing challenges, but also finding success. But we know from the historical record that the Icarian movement eventually faded away. What happened? Did they just lose steam, or were there other factors at play?
Well, remember those internal conflicts that plagued them in Nauvoo?
Yeah,
Those,
yeah.
those didn't magically disappear in Iowa. In fact, they reemerged in new and unexpected ways.
Oh, no, not another round of utopian drama. What were the issues this time? Were they still wrestling with Quebec's legacy, or were there new fault lines emerging?
It was a combination of factors. The old debates about leadership style and decision-making resurface, and perhaps most significantly, the issue of women's rights, which had been, simmering beneath the surface, it finally boiled over.
Ah, the enduring struggle for equality.
Mhm.
Even in a community founded on the principle of equality. It seems like a contradiction, doesn't it?
It highlights the complexities of social change, even within a group of like-minded individuals. The Icarians, despite their progressive ideals, were still products of their time.
Hmm.
And the broader societal norms about gender roles and women's place in society inevitably influenced their community dynamics.
So did these internal divisions ultimately tear them apart? Was it a case of utopia can't survive infighting?
It certainly played a significant role. As these disagreements intensified, the community fractured into two distinct factions, each with its own vision for the future of Icaria. And ultimately, these divisions proved insurmountable, leading to the dissolution of their community.
It's almost tragic, isn't it? They came so far, endured so much, only to be undone by the very human flaws they were trying to transcend. It makes you wonder if true utopia is even possible, or if it's just an elusive dream, destined to remain out of reach.
That's a question that has haunted philosophers and social reformers for centuries. The Icarian experiment, despite its ultimate failure, provides valuable insights into the challenges of building a better world. It reminds us that even the most noble ideals must contend with the complexities of human nature, the enduring forces of tradition and social conditioning, and the ever-present potential for conflict and division.
It's a sobering thought, but also a strangely inspiring one. But even though they didn't achieve their ultimate goal, their story reminds us that the pursuit of a better world is a worthy endeavor, even if the path is fraught with obstacles and the outcome uncertain. But I'm curious, you've talked about the Icarians in Texas and Nauvoo and in Iowa, but their story didn't end there, did it? There were other offshoots, other attempts to keep the Icarian flame alive, weren't there?
You're right. The Icarian story is full of surprising twists and turns. And in our next segment, we'll explore those final chapters, tracing the fate of the various Icarian communities, their struggles, their adaptations, and their enduring legacy.
So it's like the Icarian story just keeps going. It's like a saga with all these different chapters, these communities springing up, facing challenges, adapting, evolving. But you mentioned there were other Icarian communities.
Yeah.
What happened to the group that followed Cabet to St. Louis? Did they manage to make a go of it there?
Their story, it's a poignant one. You see, Cabet, he died not long after arriving in St. Louis.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a huge blow to his followers, left them feeling, lost and disoriented.
That must have been devastating to have come all that way, to have put so much faith in this man and his vision, only to lose him so suddenly.
It was a difficult time for them, no doubt. But they persevered. They were determined to honor Cabet's legacy and carry on his work. They purchased land outside of St. Louis and tried to establish a self-sustaining community there.
So even without their leader, the Icarian spirit, it lived on. It's really a testament to the power of their ideals, their belief in a better way of life.
It truly is.
Yep.
But as with the other Icarian settlements, they weren't immune to internal conflicts. Disagreements arose, further weakening their already fragile community.
Those persistent internal conflicts, it seems like they were a recurring theme for the Icarians.
Yeah.
No matter where they settled. What were the root causes of these disagreements? Were they primarily about ideology, or were there other factors at play?
Well, you have to remember that these were individuals from diverse backgrounds with their own, unique experiences and expectations.
Yeah.
Maintaining unity and cooperation in a utopian community requires a remarkable degree of shared vision and compromise, which is incredibly difficult to sustain over time, especially when faced with adversity.
It's a reminder that building a utopia isn't just about having a good plan on paper. It's about navigating the complexities of human relationships, personalities, and differing perspectives.
Precisely. And what's so intriguing is that even as some Icarian communities struggled to survive, the Icarian ideal, it continued to inspire new followers. Remember those young Icarians who split from the Iowa community?
Yeah.
Well, they went on to form their own settlement in California, the Icarian Speranza community,
Yeah.
seeking to revive the spirit of the movement.
So even as the flame flickered in some places, it ignited anew in others. It really speaks to that enduring human desire for a better world, a more just and equitable society.
It's a powerful testament to the enduring allure of utopian ideals. The Icarian movement, despite its ultimate demise, had a ripple effect that extended far beyond its individual communities. It influenced later communal living experiments, inspired social reformers, and contributed to the growing discourse on utopian socialism and workers' rights.
So as we reach the end of our deep dive into the world of Etienne Cabet and the Icarian movement, what can we take away from this remarkable story? What lessons can we learn from their ambitious attempt to build a utopia?
The Icarian story, it offers a valuable reminder that building a utopia is a complex and challenging endeavor.
Right.
Human nature, social conditioning, and the potential for conflict are formidable obstacles.
Yep.
But their story also provides inspiration. A testament to the enduring human desire for a better world and the power of collective action. The Icarians, despite their flaws and failures, they dared to dream of a different way of life. And their story continues to resonate with those seeking social justice and a more equitable society.
Their legacy is both humbling and inspiring. It reminds us that even the most audacious dreams are worth pursuing, even if they don't, fully materialize. The Icarians may not have achieved their utopia, but they left behind a powerful legacy of idealism, social experimentation, and a relentless pursuit of a more just and humane world. And that's a story well worth remembering. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of Etienne Cabet and the Icarian movement. If you enjoyed this journey into the past and its surprising connections to the present, be sure to subscribe to the deep dive for more insightful explorations of history, culture, and ideas. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep dreaming of a better world.